Captain Peter Cutsey in South Korea. This is my briefing room. We were on a flight from Muscat to Dubai, leveled off at flight level 200, and we were preparing for the approach on the ILS to 30 left in Dubai, and we had a flame out on engine number 2. We flew the airplane, looked after it. I was pilot flying. I ensured that the auto throttles were disconnected as per FCTM and called for a con power. The first officer pilot monitoring selected the N1 page and selected con. I increased thrust to max continuous while flying the airplane and applied appropriate rudder trim. That was rudder trim, left rudder trim up to 2 units. I'll show you that shortly. And that sufficed in having the airplane. We were, I should say, at flight level 200. So I asked him to select the engine out, and he did. And the engine out prompt on the FMC for engine number 2. And the information given was speed of 225 knots and an altitude of flight level 200. We were at flight level 200, so we were fortunate. We maintained the speed of 225 knots, and we headed back to Muscat. We're on our way back to Muscat. We called for the checklist engine failure, engine shutdown. We accomplished the checklist. We'll go up and show you a quick review of what we were doing as far as fuel balancing is concerned. We tried to start the APU. Unfortunately, we could not get a light on the APU. So we were without the APU as an alternate electrical power source. So we're returning to Muscat. We're in the descent, and we are following a Muscat arrival that is a MUSUK, M-U-S-U-K, 1 Tango arrival. I'll show it to you. Stand by. So the approaches are on runway 08 left, and the actual approach in use is an RMP to runway 08 left. And we were cleared MUSUK arrival with the Booble transition to intercept the final approach course for the RMP runway 08 left. We'll go through that setup momentarily. I'll show it to you on the legs page, and we'll also show it to you in the plan format. When it came time to balance fuel, we have fuel in the center tank, but following the supplementary procedures with respect to fuel balancing, we were to leave the center tank fuel in the center tank. Let's have a look at that just to confirm what we did was correct when we came to fuel balancing. So we called it up from our iPad quickly, fuel balancing, and we went through it just to make sure that we were doing the right thing, because it's not common to have fuel in the center tank on such a short flight. There was a reason for it, and I'll talk about that at some other time. So let's go through it here. If you're unsure about how to do the fuel balancing, please refer to supplemental procedures, and that's what we're doing now. If an engine leak is suspected, it wasn't suspected, it was strictly a flame out. And so down to the next item. If the center fuel tank contains fuel, well, it did. So center tank fuel pump switches off, and you'll get a fuel configuration that may be displayed with the center tank. Well, let's just move that little guy out of the way and let's have a look. Here we are looking at the center tank, and it says we have a config message because why? Well, we know why. I'll show you. The reason why is we have fuel in the center tank with the center tank boost pumps off. So we are following the procedure, and we did. We made sure the center tank fuel pumps were off, and that's why we have the config light, all right? And we had opened the crossfeed valve first, which we did, and the crossfeed valve is open, and we turned off the pumps on the engine, the good engine side. That is, we left the boost pumps on the fullest tank, and which was, of course, the number 2 main tank. So here we are in the process of balancing fuel, and we're doing it in accordance with the supplemental procedures. We're not guessing at it. We're making sure that we do exactly what is said in the book. So going back to the supplementary procedure in the FCOM, we opened the crossfeeds selector, fuel pumps on the low tank off, and the low tank, of course, was the good engine tank, because we're burning fuel from that tank. They were off. And when the quantities are balanced, then we'll actually put the fuel pump switches in the main tank back on again, and the center tank boost pumps on at that point. So when the quantities are balanced, fuel pump switches main tank on, center tank fuel pump switches on, and crossfeed selector closed. So of course, the fuel in the center tank will override the main tank, so that way the main tanks will remain balanced until the fuel in the center tank is depleted. And then we'll start to show an imbalance again. So when you're doing fuel balancing, you have to monitor the situation constantly. And then continuing here, if the center tank contains no fuel, crossfeed selector open, all right? Fuel pump switches in the low tank off, and quantities are balanced, fuel pump switches on. So we want to make sure we follow that procedure. So we'll look at where we are now, and we have the center tank boost pumps off, and the left main is 2630 and the right main is 2700. So we're getting very close to being balanced. So we have to watch this closely. And when we are balanced, we'll refer to our iPad, check again, not just do it by memory, and to make sure that we're going to ensure that we have fuel going to the good engine. If you start to do things by memory and you're preparing for an approach and you're dynamic, right now we're paused because I'm teaching you. We're paused, we've stopped in time so that I can get you to absorb what I'm teaching you. So this is very important, that you don't do things by memory. You refer to procedures. Boeing have outlined procedures very neatly and very precisely in normal procedures, but this is a supplementary, it's an extra procedure. And then, of course, the QRH is different with respect to the importance of things. So I wanted to point that out to you. And another thing, as a reminder, people put pieces of paper between thrust levers and they put things on the center pedestal. You don't put things between thrust levers as reminders, and you don't put things on the pedestal. You keep a clean flight deck. Boeing have designed this airplane beautifully in that they have a recall. So here we've pushed it and we see fuel, elect. So both of these have situations that are of a concern. We're out of flight level, or out of, I should say, 14,000 for the altitude and descent. We're still flying the airplane, we're dynamic. And we're slightly above the path. We are in VNAV speed, so we're not doing bad. Here we are at 395 feet above the path and going a little higher. We'll get back to that in a second. I'm going to pause the flying part of it so we can focus on talking about what we have in front of us. So your reminders are built in this airplane. They're called recall. Wow. So we're going to have a look at both of these right now. All right. So what we would do is we're going to go up and have a look at the fuel and the electrical panel. So we've reset the master caution. so that it's ready to bring up another problem if we do have. All right, I'm back with you, and let's have a look at the fuel. Well, the reason why we've got a fuel message on the annunciator panel is we have low pressure pumps on, and we want them on. They're a reminder. So the system is saying, hey, you're doing something with the fuel system, don't forget. And now let's go over to the elect. We have two reasons on for that elect light on the annunciator panel. One is the drive light because we shut down the engine. We know that. But there's another one also. There's a source off light. Why? Well, we weren't able to start the APU. We tried, but it didn't start. So, of course, the right side source off light, the right generator is shut down. Of course it is. Therefore, we don't have a feed from the right engine. And that source off light is triggering that elect. If we had started the APU and we had selected it online with the APU control switch here that I'm pointing to, we wouldn't have had that source off. So the annunciator panel is really telling us a lot of good information. All right, we're in the descent out of 13,200, and we've been cleared to 5,000 feet on a QNH of 1013, which we've got set. And we've got to set up for the approach. We've got to do quite a few more things before we can land. We also have to do a one engine inoperative landing checklist before we land. So I'm going to pause the flight here, and I'm going to terminate this part of this video. This will be part 1 in a series until we actually land. So I thank you for watching, and my contact information is on the screen. I have done several of these briefings in my beautiful real simulator. As many as 140 right now, and they're all in my Google Drive package. And if you want to access that package, you have to contact me, and we'll set something up for you. I maintain that package daily, minimum once a week, with new information, updated briefings, PowerPoint slides, that is Google Slides. I've converted my PowerPoint shows to Google Slides, as many as 50 PowerPoint Google Slides and as many as 140 MP4 video briefings that I can help you stay current, stay refreshed, and prepare yourself for your next flight, and maybe prepare yourself for your next recurrent training. Thanks for watching. See you in part 2.